So one of the first stories that we're talking about is from Mother Jones. So Betsy DeVos thinks that schools are like food trucks. Yeah, that's a thing. All right, so on Thursday night at a conference on the future of school choice at Harvard University, Education Secretary Betsy DeVos continued to make friends, as she has in a slew of recent events. The cabinet member was met by a scrum of mostly silent protesters, some of whom carried signs bearing the words, "Education justice is racial justice," and "white supremacists." And that got started even before DeVos made her arguments, yet again, in favor of giving family options in what schools they should send their children to. When you say options, you probably want to be a little bit cautious about that. This time, her talking points were different, though. In an intriguing bit of wordplay, school choice, she said, could be thought in the way of we think about when we eat for dinner. Yeah. Okay, so this is what she went on to say. Near the Department of Education, there aren't many restaurants. But you know what? Food trucks are started lining the streets to provide options. Some are better than others, and some are even local restaurants that have added food trucks to their businesses to better meet customers' needs. Now, if you visit one of those food trucks instead of a restaurant, do you hate restaurants? Or are you trying to put grocery stores out of business? No, you're simply making your right choice for you based on your individual needs at that time. Just in how you eat, education is not a binary choice. Being for equal access and opportunity, being for choice, is not being against anything. And there was even a guy, Edwin Rios, had made a comment about this on Twitter. That school choice is like choosing a food truck. You are simply making the right choice based on your individual need. Okay, so you know what? Let me go ahead and comment on this. Okay, so food trucks are not at all even a good comparison to even make directly next to schools. Because if you ran a system similar like that to running a food truck where you just had that ability of choice, you have a very inconsistent system of where, as she likes to phrase it, choice, she's giving power to these schools to be able to do virtually anything that they want. Even as far as food standards are concerned, when it comes to health standards, these vendors have to still adhere to particular standards in that industry. So it doesn't necessarily matter, like this argument that she's talking about, well, it's just like picking pizza one day and then picking hot dogs the next day. They're all food. They still have to adhere to some degree of health standards. It doesn't necessarily matter. And this is what the situation comes down to, is that it comes down to standards. Your argument for choice isn't necessarily choice. You're actually not necessarily giving the people's choice. You're actually giving these private corporations the ability to do virtually whatever they want without government oversight or any kind of standards. The best way in order to proceed forward when it comes to public education is to not throw out the system as an entirety, but you're supposed to be able to improve upon that and make it better. And what DeVos is actually arguing is that we have to take away government regulation and pretty much allow these corporations to do virtually anything they want. And while some people may argue that that's actually for the better because less government oversight means innovation, that argument presupposes that a corporation is going to behave ethically and in a position that is to the betterment of the consumer. There's always a built-in presupposition that's always made with those arguments whenever innovation and free market comes about. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to act in your best interest. By its very nature, a corporation is supposed to make profits. That is by its very nature. Business ethics are a totally different matter, and it doesn't necessarily matter whether or not you have a free market that is completely deregulated. There are instances where too much regulation can work to the detriment of the free market. However, a free market that is unabated, that does not have any kind of regulation at all, is very foolish. And it can lead to a situation where you have, extreme instances. And it's not necessarily even extreme. We have that right now where we have monopolies. I mean, it was just in the news the other day that T-Mobile and Sprint is actually trying to do another merger, bringing us down to three corporations, three nationwide major cellular corporations. And the market has actually thrived on there being four, but that's not what the story is about. I was just bringing up an analogy.